Picture this, Messi in Manchester City blue, 90 minutes at the Bernabéu, one free kick to steal history. What if it actually happened?
Follow the timeline that changes everything.
Bernabéu is a living thing at night. It breathes, it hums, and in the 99th minute, with floodlights whitening the air and 60,000 people rising like a wave, it feels like the stadium is leaning forward to see one detail. The ball, placed just outside the box, slightly left of center. Pep Guardiola doesn't look at the crowd. He doesn't look at the scoreboard. He looks at the grass, at the tiny scuffs where boots have chewed the turf into dark freckles. Just breathe, he says, in half to himself, because in this timeline, everything, City's decade-long obsession, the club's billion-dollar bet, the argument that started the moment the transfer news broke, has narrowed to a single picture. Lionel Messi in sky blue, hands on hips, eyes up, Real Madrid behind the wall. A referee's whistle swallowed by noise. And if this kick goes in, Manchester City doesn't just reach another final. It steals a piece of history that in other worlds belongs to someone else. If it doesn't, then the sentence everybody has been waiting to say gets spoken into microphones across Europe. Messi to City was a mistake. Hold that moment, because it didn't start here. It started years earlier with a phone call that sounded impossible and a decision that changed the Champions League like a stone dropped into still water. Summer 2017. Barcelona is hot enough to make the pavement shimmer. In the offices near the Camp Nou, as the air conditioning fights a losing battle against the season's weight and the club's anxiety. Neymar is leaving. The rumor has teeth now. Not just noise, money, a clause, a plan that feels like it shouldn't exist in modern football until you remember that modern football is built on people doing what everyone else thinks can't be done. And then there's Messi, 30 years old. The face of an era, the player who turned the most difficult sport on earth into something that looked like it had been edited in post-production. But behind the highlights, Barcelona's reality is shifting. The boardroom is loud. The recruitment strategy is reactive. The pressure is no longer just to win. It's to prove the club still controls its own story. Across the continent, Manchester City is living the opposite problem. They're stable, they're rich, they're built. They've just hired Pep Guardiola, the coach who made Messi's peak feel like a new genre. And still, there's a missing piece, the Champions League. City can win leagues, they can set records, but Europe is different. Europe is where narratives harden into reputations. Europe is where Guardiola gets measured against his own shadow. So the idea lands in the only place it ever could, a small circle of people who don't laugh at impossible things. What if you bring Messi to Manchester, not for nostalgia, for a second act, for the one coach who speaks his football language like a native, for a team designed around space, not chaos, and for a competition that has been eating City alive for years? The obstacles are enormous, financial, political, emotional. In public, it sounds absurd. In private, it sounds like the kind of absurd that becomes real. Because if there's one thing we've learned about football at the very top, it's that the line between unthinkable and done is sometimes one signature. In this alternate timeline, that signature happens. It's late July when the first images leak. Messi at a private terminal. Messi stepping into a quiet room. Messi sitting beside Guardiola, not smiling, not posing, just listening. And when the announcement drops, it detonates. Barcelona supporters stare at their screens like they're reading a prank. City supporters refresh their feeds until the battery warnings appear. Every rival club begins calculating what the sport is about to become. And Guardiola does what he always does. He starts building the map. And before a single pass is played, the world demands an explanation. Because this isn't just a football transfer. It's an argument about what football has become. On one side, the romance of a one-club legend, a player whose story feels stitched to the colours of Barcelona. On the other, a modern superclub, a global project, a city of money and momentum reaching across Europe to take the sport's most famous name and drop him into the Premier League like a meteor. In Spain, the reaction isn't just anger, it's grief dressed as outrage. The images from Messi's final day in Barcelona become their own quiet documentary, a training ground that looks too empty, fluorescent lights buzzing over lockers, a hallway that has heard his footsteps for more than a decade. In this timeline, he doesn't walk out in tears for cameras, he keeps it private, a handshake with staff who have watched him grow from a skinny teenager into the captain of a generation. One last look at the badge, one last breath, then the plane. Manchester is colder. Not just the weather, the feeling. The sky is a low grey ceiling. The streets shine with rain. Everything looks more industrial, more functional, like a place built to work rather than pose. And that's exactly why Guardiola sells it as the perfect second act. At the unveiling, Messi doesn't try to sound like a politician. He says he wanted a challenge. He says he wanted to learn a new league. And then he says the line that hits hardest, not because it's dramatic, but because it's honest. I trust Pep. Inside the City dressing room, the dynamic is delicate. Messi is a star among stars, but not everyone reacts the same way to a star arriving late. Aguero is the bridge, an old friend, a familiar face, someone who can turn tension into laughter. David Silva becomes the quiet translator of culture. This is how Pep wants the spacing, this is how the timing works, this is how to make the ball do the running. And Guardiola, in closed meetings, is brutally clear. This is not about collecting a famous shirt, this is about Europe, because the criticism is already roaring. Pundits argue that the move proves money is swallowing the game. Rivals roll their eyes and call it inevitable. Even some City supporters, already used to being judged, feel the strange weight of needing to defend something they didn't personally do. And then come the questions that always follow a deal of this size. Financial rules, regulators, headlines that hint at investigations before anything is ever proven. In this timeline, the noise is constant, and the club's response is the only one Guardiola believes in: win. It wins so clearly that people run out of arguments, because for Pep, the purest way to answer the modern world's cynicism is still the oldest language in football: the ball. The first training session is not dramatic. No fireworks, no cinematic slow motion, just a humid Manchester morning, the sound of studs against short grass, and the quiet shock of watching Messi move among City's players like he already knows where everyone will be. Pep keeps it simple. Not because the plan is simple, but because Messi doesn't need instructions the way other stars do. He needs a system that understands him. That first season, City is already stacked: Kevin De Bruyne, David Silva, Sergio Aguero, Raheem Sterling, Leroy Sané, Fernandinho. But the shape changes as soon as Messi exists inside it. Instead of asking Messi to be a traditional winger, Pep places him where he can do the most damage without the most running. Half space, right side, in between midfield and defense, a pocket that feels safe until it isn't. City's fullbacks step inside, midfielders rotate, Sterling and Sané sprint beyond the line like knives, and Messi does what he has always done. He makes time. In the Premier League, defenders don't wait for you. They hit you. They grab your shoulder. They try to turn the match into a storm. Messi doesn't fight the storm. He walks through the calm in the center of it. By October, the league looks unfair. Not because City is winning. City has won before. It looks unfair because opponents can do everything correctly and still lose. Press high. Messi turns and the ball is gone. Sit deep. De Bruyne pings diagonals, and Messi appears in the box like a ghost. Double team him? Fine. Sané is running free on the other side. It's football as an equation where the answer is always City. But none of that is the point. The point is Europe. The point is those nights when the air feels colder and every mistake is permanent. The Champions League campaign begins quietly. Group stage wins, the familiar routine of rotating squads, the talk show debates about whether this is finally the year, and then the knockout rounds arrive. In the world we know, City's 2017-18 European run ends with Liverpool, Anfield, noise, a 3-goal deficit that never truly gets corrected. In this timeline, Liverpool still come. The draw still produces the same kind of danger, and the first leg at Anfield is still chaos. Red smoke, a pitch that seems tilted towards City's goal. A crowd that turns every tackle into an earthquake. Liverpool press like they're trying to bite the match in half. For 30 minutes, it works. City misplace passes, they lose second balls, they look human, and then Messi receives the ball near the right touchline, not even in a threatening area. 2 defenders close. A third steps up. And Messi does something Guardiola has trained City to do, but no one else does it like him. He doesn't force the pass. He waits. He drags 3 bodies toward him, 1 step at a time, like he's collecting gravity. Then he slips the ball inside to De Bruyne, with the softest touch in the stadium. De Bruyne doesn't take a second touch. He sends it behind Liverpool's line. Sterling is through. And suddenly, Anfield goes silent in that special way. Not quiet, but stunned. Liverpool still score. They always do. They find moments. They swarm. They hit City with speed. But instead of 3-0, the night ends 2-1. A loss, yes, but a loss with oxygen. And as the teams walk off, you can see it on Liverpool's faces. They expected City to panic. City didn't. The second leg at the Etihad is the kind of night that reveals what a club truly is, because City have lived here before. The pressure, either the almost, the sense that a single European tie can define an entire season. Guardiola tells his players one sentence: don't chase the game, control it. For an hour, City grind. Liverpool defend deeper than they want. Their counters are dangerous, but City's shape holds. And then Messi drops into midfield like he's tired of waiting. He draws a foul, he stands over the ball. This time he doesn't shoot. He rolls it short, receives it again, and threads a pass into the channel for Sané. Sané cuts it back. Aguero finishes. 1. The stadium shakes. Liverpool look to respond, but their press is heavier now. Their legs a fraction slower. And when they push up for an equalizer, Messi finds Sterling behind the line. 2. City win 2-0. On aggregate, City go through. In this timeline, the sentence changes. Not City bottle it again, but City are different now. From there, the path opens. The semi-final against a team that defends with obsession and attacks with sudden violence. A final in Kiev against Real Madrid, the kings of the competition, the club that seems built from European nights. And yes, in this timeline, the Champions League still presents its favorite plotline: Messi versus Cristiano Ronaldo. Not as a marketing slogan, as a real, living question. Which era wins when they collide one more time? Kiev is warm. The stadium lights are harsh. The pitch looks too perfect, like it was painted. City start nervously. Real Madrid don't. They've been here too many times to fear it. Ronaldo roams the box, waiting for one cross, one lapse. But Guardiola has something he didn't have in other years: a player who can slow a final down. Messi spends the first half not scoring, not assisting, just pulling Real's midfield apart with his positioning. Every time Casemiro steps toward him, a gap opens behind. every time Modric shifts to cover and De Bruyne finds space. And in the second half, the moment arrives. Messi collects the ball near the top of the box. He feints left, drags a defender, and slips a pass into David Silva. Silva doesn't control it. He lifts it, first time, into the space behind the back line. Sterling arrives like he's been fired from a cannon. Goal. Real equalize because Real always do. A cross, a loose clearance, a finish that feels inevitable. The match tilts toward extra time. And then, with 10 minutes left, Messi does the thing that makes you remember why football can feel unfair. He doesn't sprint. He doesn't overpower anyone. He just glides into a pocket, receives a pass, and hits a shot that curls away from the keeper's hand, like it's being pulled by a magnet. City win. Guardiola falls to his knees. Not because he's surprised, because the thing he's been asked about for years, the thing he's been haunted by, has finally been answered. In this timeline, Manchester City win the Champions League in 2018, and the ripple begins. Here's the part most people get wrong about a transfer like this. They assume the story ends when you lift the trophy. It doesn't. It starts. Because once City become European champions, the world changes its relationship with them. Every away ground treats them like a final boss. Every referee decision becomes a headline. Every European rival circles City on the calendar months in advance. And inside City, something changes too. When you win the Champions League once, you don't become relaxed. You become addicted. The 2018-19 season arrives with a different kind of pressure. Now, City aren't chasing history. They're defending it. Messi is 31. Guardiola manages him like a priceless instrument. Rest days, controlled training loads, minutes saved for Europe. The domestic season is a knife fight. The Premier League doesn't care about your European status. And in the Champions League, the draw delivers a familiar villain, a fellow English side with nothing to lose. In the world we know, City's 2019 exit comes with one of the cruelest moments in the modern game. A late goal erased, a stadium celebrating, then freezing as an official he raises a finger to an earpiece. In this timeline, the details shift, but the cruelty remains. City reach the quarter-finals again. The tie is tense, tactical, full of little fouls, and seconds wasted. And late in the second leg, Messi slides a pass through a gap that shouldn't exist. The Etihad erupts, players sprint, Guardiola's assistants jump, then the flag goes up. Offside, by a shoulder, by a frame, by a margin so small it feels like the sport is mocking everyone involved. City go out, not because they were outplayed, but because modern football, at the sharpest edge, can turn into geometry. That night, the question becomes louder. Is the Champions League something you can conquer, or something that allows you through when it feels like it? And for Messi, the loss has a deeper sting, because he didn't come to Manchester to collect league titles. He came to change Europe. He already did it once. Now he has to do it again. And the aftermath of that quarter-final is where the alternate history gets interesting, because the loss doesn't break City, it sharpens them. There's a night in June, training ground dark. Only one floodlight left on, where Guardiola and Messi stay after everyone else has gone. No cameras, no drama, just a pitch that smells like cut grass and a ball sitting between them. Pep draws lines with his boot. This, he says, tapping the half space, is where they're waiting for you now. Messi nods. He already knows. They're not defending City anymore. They're defending an idea. And that forces Guardiola into his favorite kind of problem, evolution. Well, the next season's European plan becomes less about perfect attacks and more about surviving the moments when perfection isn't possible. City add muscle to the spine, more control in midfield, more speed at centre-back, more calm in the goalkeeper's voice, and Messi, quietly, changes too. He starts speaking more in the dressing room. Not speeches. Messi isn't built for speeches. Short instructions, small corrections, a hand on a shoulder, a look that says, "Don't rush it." Meanwhile, the shockwave back in Spain is still rolling. Barcelona without Messi don't just lose goals. They lose gravity. Opponents who once arrived at the Camp Nou already half defeated start believing they can take points. In Europe, the margins punish them. A missed chance here, a defensive lapse there, and suddenly the club that used to feel inevitable becomes vulnerable. And when Barcelona become vulnerable, the entire Champions League bracket feels different. Nights that were once destined for Messi's left foot are now open. Other clubs grow bolder. The tournament stops orbiting one sun and becomes a sky full of competing stars. That's why, when the pandemic season arrives and the Champions League turns into a sprint in empty stadiums, it feels like the purest version of the competition. No grand entrances, no choreographed noise, just football stripped down to nerves and tactics and the sound of the ball. In Lisbon, the city live in hotel corridors that smell like sanitizer and coffee. Their days are repetitive: breakfast, meeting, training, meeting, sleep. Guardiola becomes almost monastic. Whiteboard sessions, clipped instructions, the same phrases repeated until they become instinct. Messi's routine is quieter. He's older now, aware that form isn't something you own. It's something you maintain. Ice baths, stretching, short bursts of intensity, and in the empty hours between sessions, there's the strange emotional weight of elite football without the crowd. When City score, the celebration sounds different. You can hear players laughing, you can hear boots skidding, you can hear the bench shouting names. It's intimate in a way the Champions League usually never is. Then Bayern arrive, and the intimacy disappears. Because Bayern don't just beat you, they overwhelm you. They make you feel, for 90 minutes, like the pitch is smaller and time is faster. City's exit that year isn't a collapse, it's a reminder. Even in an alternate world where Messi joins Guardiola again, the Champions League still demands more than brilliance. It demands the ability to suffer without losing yourself. Then 2020 arrives like a door slammed open. The world changes, stadiums empty, schedules compress. Football becomes something played in strange silence, where you can hear players breathing and coaches shouting instructions like they're directing a film set. In real life, the 2019-20 Champions League ends in Lisbon in a one-off Final 8, a sprint where one mistake ends everything. In this timeline, City enter that sprint still loaded, still dangerous, and still haunted, because in knockout football, being better doesn't guarantee being safe. City survive the early rounds. Messi scores in a stadium that echoes. Guardiola's celebrations are smaller now, almost private. And then comes the semi-final that feels like a warning from the universe, a German machine, a team that presses like a swarm and attacks with a kind of brutal certainty. Bayern. For City, it's not fear, it's respect. For Messi, it's memory. He's faced them in different jerseys, in different seasons, in different stages of his career. This time he tries to solve them the same way he solves everyone, by controlling the ball. But Bayern don't let you control the ball. They hunt it, they strip it away, they turn every loose pass into a breakaway. City concede, then concede again. And even when Messi scores, because he finds a pocket, because he always finds a pocket, it doesn't change the feeling. Bayern are coming anyway. City go out, in an empty stadium, with the sound of Bayern's bench cheering echoing around the stands like a reminder, there is always someone else. And here's the twist, the reframing moment that most alternate histories ignore. Messi joining City doesn't make the Champions League predictable. It makes it sharper, because when you stack talent on talent, you don't remove randomness. You increase the stakes of every random moment. A deflection, a slip, a missed chance, they matter more than ever. By 2020 to 2021, City are older in some places and new in others. The defense is tougher, the spine is stronger, and the team is less romantic and more complete. Messi is 33. His running is different now, not less intelligent, just more selective. Guardiola adapts. He does what great managers do when time starts tapping the shoulder of a great player. He reinvents the role. Messi becomes less of a constant dribbler and more of a conductor. He drops deeper. He receives between the lines. He becomes the first pass and the last pass. And suddenly, City don't just attack beautifully. They suffer beautifully. This is the secret ingredient. Not highlights. Control under pressure. In the world we know, City reached the Champions League final in 2021 and lose to Chelsea in a match defined by small decisions. In this timeline, the final is still there. The stage is still blinding. The opponent is still familiar. But the outcome changes, not with fireworks, but with one adjustment. Guardiola doesn't overthink the midfield. He keeps the balance. He lets Messi float instead of forcing him into rigid zones. And when the match tightens and both sides start playing like they're afraid of making the first mistake, Messi finds one pass, just one, a slip into the channel, a cutback, a finish. City win their second Champions League in 4 years. Now it's not a miracle, it's a pattern, and patterns change the way people behave. In boardrooms, rivals stop asking, "Can City do it again?" and start asking, "How do we stop them?" In dressing rooms, younger players look at Messi differently, not as a poster on a wall, but as a teammate who has survived every kind of pressure you can survive in this sport. And outside, in the wider football world, the conversation turns from romance to reality. If Guardiola and Messi can reunite and win in England, then no legacy is fixed. No story is locked. Greatness can be moved, rebuilt, re-engineered, if you have the courage to gamble on it. That realization doesn't make the Champions League quieter. It makes it louder, because everyone else suddenly feels they have permission to chase their own impossible idea too. And across Europe, that changes everything. If you're asking yourself, would the rest of football allow that? That's the right question, because dominance is never just about talent, it's about reaction. By 2021 to 22, the reaction is fully formed. Opponents don't play City, they plan for City. They build entire tactical schemes around suffocating Messi's space, blocking De Bruyne's passing lanes, forcing City wide, daring them to cross. And in the Champions League, the draw brings the most poetic opponent possible. Real Madrid, the club that, even when it looks vulnerable, still carries the Champions League like a family name. This semi-final becomes the collision of two kinds of power. City's system, Real's belief. The first leg in Manchester is clinical. City press. City pass, City score. They take an advantage to Spain. And then we arrive back at the night we opened with. The Bernabéu, the noise, the air that feels like it has electricity in it. Real Madrid push, City resist, minutes drip away. Then suddenly, Real find 2 goals late. The stadium explodes, the tie flips. The old story, Madrid's magic, tries to rewrite itself in real time. Guardiola's face goes tight, his hands go still. On the pitch, City's players glance at each other with that look every footballer knows. Is this happening again? And that's when the foul happens. A tug on Messi's shoulder, a leg clipped, the whistle, the ball placed outside the box. Now, in this timeline, the free kick is not just a chance to score. It's a referendum on Guardiola's project, on City's identity. On Messi's decision to leave his first football home for this cold, ambitious club in Manchester, Messi steps back. While he doesn't argue with the referee, he doesn't complain, he just measures. The wall jumps, the ball rises, and it bends. It bends with a violence that looks gentle. It bends around fingertips. It kisses the inside netting. For a fraction of a second, the Bernabéu is silent. So silent you can imagine hearing the ball settle. Then the noise returns, but now it's a different kind. A shocked noise, a disbelief noise. City's bench erupts. Guardiola screams once, loud enough to feel like he's releasing years of pressure. City survive, City go through, and the Champions League final, that in other worlds becomes a familiar story, is rewritten. The final is in Paris. The stadium is bright, almost sterile, the kind of place where every sound feels amplified. Liverpool arrive with their own hunger, their own scars, their own belief that this is their time. The match is tight because finals are tight. Nobody wants to be the first to blink. Messi doesn't dominate the way he did at 30. He doesn't need to. He chooses moments. In the second half, with legs heavy and nerves fraying, he drops deep, receives the ball, and waits just long enough for a runner to go. Then he releases it. De Bruyne into space, a low cross, a finish. City take the lead. Liverpool push, because Liverpool always push. They hit the bar, they force saves, they make the match feel like it's balancing on a knife edge. And then, late, City strike again on the counter. A second goal, the kind of goal that ends a final even while there are still minutes left. When the whistle goes, Messi stands still. He doesn't sprint, he doesn't leap. He looks up into the lights and exhales. 3 Champions League titles with City across 5 seasons. Not because football became easy, because City became ruthless, and because Messi found a second life in a system that extended his greatness instead of demanding he repeat his youth. So what happens next? Because football doesn't allow anyone to hold the crown without trying to rip it away. The next season, City do what great teams eventually do. They evolve again. A new striker arrives, a player built like a storm cloud, a finisher who turns half chances into goals. The attack becomes less intricate and more inevitable. And Messi, now 35, becomes something he has never been before. A veteran, a guide, not the engine, but the compass. He starts fewer matches in Europe. He enters when the rhythm needs changing, when a defense has been bending for 70 minutes and one intelligent touch can break it. In the 2023 final in Istanbul, yes, Istanbul, where the air off the Bosphorus feels cooler at night and the stadium seems to carry old memories, City find themselves in another tight game. An Italian defense holding its shape like a brick wall. A crowd waiting for the first crack. City score. Then they defend. And in the final minutes, Guardiola looks down his bench. He makes a choice that feels symbolic. He calls Messi. Messi steps on. He doesn't sprint past anyone. He doesn't dribble through 3 players. He takes the ball, holds it in the corner, draws a foul, and kills the match with intelligence. The whistle goes. City win again. And in that moment, the story isn't just Messi won more trophies. The story is that Guardiola's Manchester City becomes what Guardiola's Barcelona once was. A template, a warning, a dream. Now zoom out. What did this transfer actually change? It changed Barcelona's identity earlier than anyone expected. It forced them to rebuild without the safety net of the greatest player in their history. It changed the Premier League's self-image, because once Messi played his best football in England, the league's gravity grew heavier. It changed the Champions League's mythology, because the competition stopped being a place where City only learned pain. Instead, it became a place where City learned permanence, and it changed Messi. This is the quiet part that matters. At Barcelona, Messi was the center of everything. At City, he became the center of a system. That's a different kind of responsibility. It's less emotional, more technical, less about carrying, more about guiding. And maybe that's the biggest rewrite of all. Because in this timeline, Messi doesn't have a late career escape, a temporary adventure, a short detour away from home. He has a second peak, a peak built not on being the fastest or the most explosive, but on being the smartest person on the pitch. So here's the final question, the kind you can't answer with stats. Would football have been better for it? Would you trade the chaos, the upsets, even the legends that happened in other realities, for a decade where Guardiola and Messi reunited and turned Europe into their laboratory? Because that's what this really is. Not a fantasy about goals, a story about control, about ambition, about a club that wanted to be remembered, and chose the one player in the world who could bend history toward them. Back at the Bernabéu, long after that free kick has become a clip replayed for years, you can still picture it. The ball curling, in the net snapping, the stadium stunned, and Guardiola, finally looking up, into the noise, into the lights, into the realization that for once, Europe didn't slip away. It stayed, in his hands, in Messi's left foot, in Manchester City's timeline.